Hello everyone and welcome back to Niche, and we are here with our motley crew on the, I think is actually one of the killer islands. This is the portal we came through, and it's not your traditional killer island, but it does still have the bones there. So this one, I believe, is the jungle island, and then that's the easier island, and that's one that could be an easier jungle. So yeah, it's, I think, one of the killer islands. I'm not 100% positive, though, but it's not a jungle at least, and for that we are very grateful. And we are here with the tribe just trying to, we actually, basically what happened last time was the tribe had to flee from the previous killer island because there wasn't enough food. And so what ended up happening was that, we came running to this, and we actually made it with two of our creatures who just passed away over here, and they were an unlikely bunch. One was the last survivor, pretty much, of our original line, and the other was a rogue that we just grabbed from the jungle and said, come with us, and the two of them ended up becoming mates, and these are their children. So, what happened with all of that, I just want to clear up some things. So, I've had to take a break from Niche for a while because the comment section got a little bit it got a little bit aggressive, maybe is the word. I'm trying to think of the right word. Basically what it was it turned into a bunch of people debating what I'd done wrong, and while I don't mind getting advice on that, all of you guys had different ideas, pretty much. And so I had a bunch of criticism from a bunch of different people saying, you should have done this, you should have done this, you should have done this, and saying all the things that, and it got to be too much because it got really, really, really negative and critical. So I actually have had to take a break from Niche from that because I did not have motivation to do that. So while I don't mind, and while I encourage you guys to give criticism, please remember to keep it constructive, and don't be... There's a difference between saying, you did this and this and this wrong, which is what it started to feel like after I had floods of comments pouring in telling me that I had done everything wrong and not even agreeing on what exactly I'd done wrong. But it's a lot better to say something like, maybe you could have done this instead, or maybe this could have helped. So the situation as I see it, I still feel like I did what I could to the best of my ability. And what ended up happening was on the previous island, the population got too big to sustainably be able to sustain itself. Or not the previous island, the island before that, the original jungle. We had too many creatures, and we did end up breeding quite fast, but the food was actually on the decline since we came to that island because the jungles don't provide all that much food, and we didn't have many of these berry bushes. What we had were those smelly fruit bushes, which are few and far between most of the time. So when we started trying to breed for our warrior line, which is some of the descendants from that are here, and when we started having to do more and more breeding, even when we gave up on trying to breed for the perfect line as well, the creatures that are basically perfectly suited to survive in the jungle, even when we gave up on that for a time to work on the warrior lines, it was already too late. The food was declining too fast, and so when we had to run for the next jungle, we didn't have enough food, and there wasn't really much we could do about it. The tribe on the other island got too big, too fast, and it just, there was no way to sustainably support it. And a lot of that was due to the fact that I had no idea what to expect going into the jungle. Going into the jungle now, I would say we probably wouldn't have to breed as fast as I did. I didn't know what to expect going into it. I thought we might get wiped out immediately because I have played in the jungle before, and when I did that, that was what happened. We started getting wiped out immediately, and had to just keep breeding and breeding and breeding to even be able to survive. But that didn't happen this time, and so I had overcompensated for what I thought would have happened, which, yeah, I think that was probably my biggest mistake in the whole thing, but it was part of learning. And part of me not even knowing what to expect. And I don't want to seem defensive here. But I'm just trying to explain my logic, because what I got was a bunch of very critical comments from a bunch of different ways that you guys thought I should have done things, and there wasn't a lot of, everybody plays niche differently. Everyone has their own methods, and I want to address this beforehand because it's been hard for me to work on this series, and that's not how it should be. It's not good for, if it gets to the point where I'm having a hard time making videos because I'm afraid of the response I'm going to receive, I'm afraid of people coming down super duper hard and just saying, you did this wrong and this wrong and this wrong, and it's just going to be a string of negatives, that can't happen. That can't be happening, because at some point I'm going to have to draw the line. So I understand that a lot of you guys think I should have done things differently. The trouble with that is niche, there's not one way to play niche. And what works for you, there might be other methods that work as well. There might be other methods that don't work. What works for you might not work for somebody else. It all just depends. There's a lot of randomness in this game, and a lot of factors that aren't, there's a lot of things that come into play, and a lot of the time there's no one formula, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So we had creatures that were perfectly suited to survive in the jungle, but even they didn't thrive because we expanded too quickly. And it's different each time, because I've gone to jungles in my solo playing with creatures that were, to the best of my ability, like basically the same genetics that I did in this playthrough, and they started getting wiped out really, really fast. It depends, because for one thing, you end up with different apes on different islands. We saw that the hearing ape was much more destructive than the seeing ape for our creatures, because the one thing we didn't have was the velvet paw, because we chose to be able to run rather than hide. So it just depends what you do, and just depends on a lot of factors. And so I guess what I'm trying to say in this is, I've always really enjoyed playing niche, and I've enjoyed playing it with you guys, and for the most part it's been great. But last episode I got so much very negative, there was so much negativity, and it was to the point where it made me, for a while there, say I have to take a break from this series because I can't handle how aggressively negative it was. I don't mind if you guys have criticism or suggestions, but please try to keep it constructive. And I felt like, maybe it was just the volume of it, but it felt like it got to, I felt like it was a lot of people saying, you died off because this. Ultimately, we started dying off because we didn't have enough food. And that was just because of, if you look at, we can only bring 5 creatures to each of the killer islands. We brought those 5 creatures and then had to start breeding rapidly because we needed more creatures in order to even be able to survive, and we wanted the apes to be able, we didn't want the apes to be able to kill us off super easily. And unfortunately, it's hard to do that sort of breeding on the killer island in the jungle because all we have are those smelly fruit plants that don't provide that much food and that aren't all that easy to find. Ultimately, that's what I attribute us having so much trouble there to. And it's not supposed to be an easy island. It really isn't. But it just got to be overwhelming, the amount of negativity in the comments, and so that's why we haven't had niche for a few days. That's the biggest reason. That, and I've been super stressed out with other things and trying to get videos done, and real life has not been the the slowest at the moment. It's been very fast-paced and very stressful, and between all of that, I couldn't handle the idea of coming back here to niche. So I'm sorry for all the talking, but I just wanted to raise this point with you guys, because if it gets to be to the point where I am stressed out trying to make a series because I'm expecting a lot of backlash and a lot of negativity, not criticism. Criticism is okay. Constructive criticism is fine. But when it becomes very negative, then it's hard for me to want to come back to a series. And that's, if I'm not enjoying making a series, you guys are not going to enjoy watching it. It will not be fun for anyone. And so I just wanted to address that. I'm probably going to put this in a separate episode and just kind of an announcement Just to let you guys know. So, I mean, it's okay. I'm not blaming you guys, but I just want to say it needs to be not such an immediately very, very negative thing. For the past several episodes, what I got were mostly negative comments telling me that I was doing this and this and this and this wrong, and ultimately when it boils down to it, I've had to make some decisions in this, maybe not all of them the right decisions, but I was trying to do what I thought would keep the tribe alive, and I can't take your feedback in real time for these tribes. If we do it in a live stream at some point, that's a little different. But when it comes down to the game, sometimes I have to make calls in the episode. Sometimes they're not the best calls. But I have to do what I think is going to be best for the tribe in the long run. And sometimes there's disagreement for that. Ultimately, what I'm trying to say is everybody plays niche differently. And so there's probably not one, or there's not always one clear reason why things went wrong, or why things didn't work the way we wanted them to, or why the tribe had so many problems. It's not just down to one reason, and it's not black and white. So that's just what I want to say, is that I'm going to continue the series, and we're probably going to be starting a new season soon, because there is supposed to be another update this month, and there's only a few days left in the month. So, but for me to be able to continue this, and for it to be something that everybody enjoys, and for something that all of us can appreciate, it needs to not become so negative. And I know you guys meant well, but it got to be way too much, and it was hard for me to continue because I anticipated a lot of negative backlash. So I hope you guys understand that. I'm not trying to call any of you guys out. I'm just saying it made it more difficult for me to want to come back to this series, which I really like a niche, but I can't, if it's just going to lead to a lot of negativity and a lot of criticism, I'm not going to be able to do it. So if you're going to criticize something I've done, if you're going to say maybe I should have done something differently, it helps if it's not a list of you did this wrong and this wrong and this wrong and this wrong. It helps if you said, well, this could have contributed, or maybe you could have done this differently next time or something, and take suggestions. But also keep in mind that everybody is going to play niche differently, and while I try to accommodate your suggestions, and well, a lot of the time I do think your suggestions are good and they do help, some of the time I'm trying to do something differently, and maybe it's not what you guys are used to, but I have a plan in it. So, while it's totally fine to suggest, it's not as helpful for me if you're just saying you did this wrong and this wrong and this wrong, because in niche, ultimately the goal of the game is not to do it right, it's to survive, and that can be done in a number of ways. Even though we might say we weren't that successful on the previous island, ultimately we did escape with a breeding pair, and we did survive. And even though we bred too fast on the jungle island, we still had creatures leave that, we still survived. Ultimately, the goal of this game is to survive and adapt, and that's something we've been able to do so far. So there's not really a right or wrong way to play the game, and all I want to say, and I've said this a million times, and it's probably kind of rambling, it's hard for me to get this into words, you know? All I want to say is that if you're gonna criticize or suggest a different way, keep in mind that some of it is not necessarily sometimes it's just a matter of differing play styles, and ultimately what it comes down to is what works out in the end for the good of the tribe and the survival of the tribe. So please do keep that in mind. I don't blame you guys. I know the last few episodes in this have been really rough and really scary, and we didn't know if the tribe was going to survive or not. But if I'm going to continue this series and have it be something that I can enjoy so that I can continue to produce content that you guys will enjoy, it needs to not be so negative. So just please keep that in mind. If you're going to criticize, keep it constructive and not just a list of all the things that I should have done or that I did wrong and should have done differently, because not everybody plays the game the same way, and ultimately it's about surviving and trying to find the right genetics that will work. So anyway, this is kind of just a little bit of a PSA about niche and just some things to keep in mind for the future. Thank you guys for sitting through this. And I'm going to put this up separately than the normal episode. But yeah, please do keep this in mind, because it got to the point where it got so negative that I was stressed out thinking about sitting down and recording niche. And that can't be happening. That can't be something that goes on. Otherwise, I'm not going to be able to continue the series for you guys. So anyway, thank you guys for understanding. Thank you for letting me take this time to kind of talk about that. And I'm going to go ahead and record the normal episode here in a minute. But yeah, I just want to thank you guys, and I want to thank you for being so supportive through most of the series. For the most part, you guys have done really well. It was just these past few episodes where things got a little heated and a little bit negative and a little bit stressful. And you know, I know that's okay, but I know people are stressed out. I was stressed out, but it got to be a little bit much for me to be able to handle. So please do try to keep that in mind when you're commenting. Try to keep it constructive more than just throwing in my face what you guys think I've done wrong. So just please try to keep that in mind. But anyway, I want to thank you guys for sticking with the series, even as it did go through a difficult time with that. And I have no plans to stop the series. I hope it continues for a long time. I like it, as generally I like it. Generally, it's a very fun and usually not that stressful game to play. It's a nice alternative to the games where you're constantly having to act quickly, as opposed to this is turn-based. If there's a carnivore, you can sit and think about it a little bit more. So it's a nice and usually relaxing alternative to some of the other games. It's a nice change sometimes, if you get what I'm saying. I'm sorry, I feel like I'm really rambling and being incoherent in this, but if it gets to the point of me being stressed out by the idea of the criticism I'm going to receive, that's not a good thing. So please try to keep that in mind when you're pointing things out or making suggestions. Make sure it's constructive. And keep in mind that sometimes it's just a matter of we don't play niche the same way. And sometimes I have an overall plan that I'm trying to work towards, and maybe it's not the same as what you guys have done, but maybe it'll still work. And it's one of those things where I don't know entirely what I'm doing either, and I'm still trying to figure things out, and that's a lot of the fun in it, is seeing what does work and what doesn't. So anyway, thank you guys so much for listening to me talk for 20 minutes, and and thank you for sticking with me through this. So with that said, I'm going to wrap this up, and I'm going to go ahead and record the actual episode now. So I will see you guys then, but until next time, this is Jay, over and out.